Hello, I'm John Hassinger at JupiterJohn.com, and I also contribute articles to astrolocherry.com. This video is about the most important planet in your horoscope and why it's important. To begin, a few things need to be explained. Some groundwork needs to be laid. Astrology is only half the story. The other half is the Kabbalah. Allow me to explain. In school, the first two courses in economics are microeconomics and macroeconomics. One discusses the details of business and the other the broad principles of economics. In the same way, astrology is the microscopic view in which one focuses in on the details of a horoscope. The Kabbalah, on the other hand, is the macro view, dealing with the basic principles of creation. For example, in astrology, the moon symbolizes the instincts and feelings, pointing to a personal attribute in the horoscope. The moon in the Kabbalah, however, is referred to as the principle of movement. Without movement, there would be no physical universe. Movement is one of the basic principles, and that is symbolized by the moon. It also means subconsciousness giving birth to consciousness. A little bit of Jungian psychology there. Subconsciousness giving birth to consciousness. Think about that. In one, we talk about the forces working within the individual, the horoscope. In the other, Kabbalah, we refer to the principles of creation. My book, Kabbalah for the Absolute Beginner, goes into this more deeply. Now, just as there are 10 planets and 12 signs in astrology, there are 22 forces in the Kabbalah as symbolized by the 22 Hebrew letters. So astrology doesn't stand alone. She has a sister, the Kabbalah, and the two together are quite beautiful. Recently, about 1,000 years ago, there was a Kabbalistic update. Someone took the 22 forces and turned them into an inner roadmap, the Kabbalistic tree of life. So what does all this have to do with the most important planet in your horoscope? You may ask. Patience, I'm getting to that. Here's the tree of life. All kinds of symbols, numbers, and such can be placed on this framework. For example, here are the 22 Hebrew letters symbolizing the forces resulting in creation. As you see, here are the Hebrew letters. So we have, starting from the top, Aleph, Beth, Gimel, Dal, He, Vav, and so on, down through Tav, the last Hebrew letter. And for those who are sensitive to color and are artistically inclined, here's a tree with the corresponding colors of each force. Rather lovely, don't you think? The planets in the astrology can be added to the tree like this. To repeat, the tree of life is the symbol of all creation, a roadmap, if you will. And here, as you see, are the planets. They're kind of small. I need to do a better job on this, but there they are, the 10 planets. Now, in astrology, the three outermost planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are referred to in the books as the higher octave planets, the transcendentals, and in the Kabbalah, the supernals. Here is Uranus. Here is Neptune, and here is Pluto. I'll show you another picture of this. This tree shows what is called the abyss. The abyss is an area that is between the supernals, the planets in the upper triad, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and the rest of the tree. Here's a tree showing the abyss with the hidden paths and where Saturn goes, right here. Between the supernals and the rest of the tree, the abyss, and in the abyss, Saturn. Notice the dotted lines indicating that it's hidden. As you can see in this next illustration, the three outer planets, the supernals, are placed in the top positions in the Kabbalistic tree of life. forming the supernal triad, and these are joined by the fourth force, Saturn, which is placed between them and the rest of the tree, as I said previously. Here Saturn symbolizes the guardian at the gate, the dweller on the threshold, Heimdall, the ever-vigilant watchman on the Rainbow Bridge. This force, Saturn, is symbolic of that inner psychological part of you that decides whether or not you can cross the bridge, the abyss. But what is Saturn really? When you go to a clothing store, part of the routine is trying on stuff to see how they look. Clothes and stuff to see how it looks. You go into it and look at a full-length mirror to see how things appear. You decide whether you look good or not. You make a decision about the clothing you're trying on. That's Saturn. You love the garlic cheese biscuits you've had in a favorite restaurant. So you get the amazing recipe and you mix and you bake and you taste and they pass the test. But whose test? Saturn's. The judges in Dancing with the Stars scrutinize the contestants as they whirl across the floor. They look at the choreography, they look at the difficulty of the dance, the timing, they make their notes. And what do they symbolize? Saturn. You get the idea? Saturn is that position of consciousness you assume when you are making a judgment call. Okay? Most deeply, Saturn is the Holy Grail, the jeweled chalice which holds the fire brought to mankind by Prometheus. This is the scaffolding surrounding your personality, holding things together and preparing the way. This is why Saturn is called the planet of maturity and self-perfection, and why he is so important in the horoscope, both in the birth chart and by transit. He's that part of you psychologically that knows when the scarf in the clothing shop looks good, when the dancers deserve the coveted score of 10, and when the biscuits, fresh out of the oven, are to die for. He is the perfection, the necessary maturity to begin to be able to encapsulate and bring into outer consciousness the higher forces symbolized by the supernals, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now for a few words about each of the supernals. Uranus fosters the inner experience of uniqueness. This is Uranus here. This occurs rather suddenly, a leap in consciousness, a sudden flash of insight, the dawning that you are not one of the Jungian archetypes as symbolized by the signs of the zodiac, such as the hero, the mother, the wise old man, the eternal youth, the disciple, and so on. But rather, you are one of a kind, really aware, really conscious, and perhaps for the first time, alone. In contrast to Uranus, which is intuitive and often harsh, like a light being clicked on in a dark room, Neptune is more of a feeling of immersion, emotion, a sense of being bathed in a vast sea of light. It's as though Uranus creates an opening, an aha moment. And this, grasped by the mature ego, leads to a vision, a transcendental experience, Neptune. Whereas, like the wind, Uranus is quick and severe. Neptune, like pouring rain, is slow and steady, but it can be overwhelming. In other words, Uranus is more mental in nature and Neptune is more emotional. Easy peasy. Uranus is the lightning-quick downpour of intuitive understanding. Neptune is baptism into a vast vision that gives the ego inspiration. Pluto is the furthest planet out and therefore symbolizes the deepest part of the individual. Pluto represents what gives our lives deeper meaning. He symbolizes that urge for, to do a lasting legacy. Within each of us, there's something of worth, something beyond daily routines of our life. Pluto is involved with that. This is the universal will, the transformation that occurs because one has found something of greater worth in life, something beyond simply living and working from day to day. This is the planet of destiny, and often expresses in our giving back to society, or somehow making our mark and leaving a lasting legacy. He is rightly called Pluto, the transformer. So back to Saturn. When exploring a horoscope to see what's going on with Saturn, and especially when you're watching him as he transits through a birth chart, please keep in mind that the most deeply this planet expresses is in its job as, preparing the person and creating maturity. It's the force necessary so you can consciously incorporate inner numinous experiences, giving your life much greater perspective and deeper meaning. My favorite author is Liz Green. For my students, possession of her book, Saturn, is required. Here it is. Saturn. Now, there's different, it's been published a number of times, so there's different covers, but this is the basic book. On page 61, she says, Saturn always strives for the truth. It is man's fear of this motivation within himself that brings about the catastrophe, for the relentless search for reality, as symbolized by Saturn, threatens his most challenged illusions. And obviously, cherished illusions should be replaced, as the person grows, by actuality and greater consciousness, which is what Saturn the Challenger does. He challenges you to grow and evolve. And for this reason, Saturn, both in the birth chart and by transit, is the most important planet in the horoscope. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm Jupiter John. Thank you for listening.